¿Están listos para escucharla? Personas que han, o más bien la cantidad de entradas que hemos tenido a las instalaciones de Tijuana Innovadora, a las instalaciones del Centro Cultural Tijuana, a pabellones, talleres, a sala de espectáculos. Se me pone la carne de gallina. 918,446 en esta segunda edición. Y esta es la respuesta que se ha tenido a Tijuana Innovadora. Y vamos a continuar con nuestra tercera conferencia del día de hoy, que se titula Las nuevas fronteras del diseño, y está a cargo de Paola Antonelli. Antonelli es curadora senior del Museo de Arte Moderno de Nueva York, ni más ni menos, donde ha trabajado desde 1994. Recibió el Premio Nacional de Diseño del Instituto Smithsonian, Mente de Diseño, en 2006. Fue nombrada como una de los 25 diseñadores más visionarios por la revista Times en el 2007 y una de las 100 personas más poderosas en el mundo del arte por la revista Art Review en el 2010. Antonelli ha sido profesora de Historia del Diseño y Teoría en UCLA y en Harvard. Es autora del libro Humildes Obras Maestras, Maravillas Cotidianas de Diseño y coautora de Diseño y la Mente Elástica. Nuestra invitada ha escrito artículos para varias publicaciones como Metropolis, Harvard Design Review, ID, Paper Metropolitan Home, Harper's Bazaar y Nest. Démosle la bienvenida, como los tijuanenses sabemos hacerlo, a Paola Antonelli. Welcome.
Buenos días a Tijuana, es el domingo por la mañana, entonces muchísimas gracias por estar aquí, muchísimas. Y me gustaría mucho hacer esta plática en español, pero soy italiana y mi idioma profesional es inglés y no puedo hacer una plática tampoco en italiano, es embarazante, pero cada momento voy a restarme, decir, no sé cómo decir esto o lo otro, entonces voy a confiarme en los traductores fabulosos. Gracias de ahora. I'm going to move to English then, and I'm here today to talk to you about the new frontiers of design. Tijuana is a frontier town, but frontier, as my wonderful host Raúl Cárdenas says, it's not the border, it's a state of mind. It's about being able to think of a new space that is going to be more important in the future than the centers of gravity of nations. And design is something similar. You know, design is a kind of undefined discipline. Many people think that design is cute chairs and cars, but it's not. It's so much more. And I would like to show to you today that design is a social force, is a political intention, is about altruism, is about feeling responsible for other human beings. It's about everything that Tijuana is thinking of for the next few years, with all of the different ideas and initiatives that are happening all over town, from Camino Verde to Las Playas. It's really exciting to be here and to talk about the new type of design that we're all interested in today. If you can see, I mean, it's too far away, so you probably cannot read it well. But this is a slide, una diapositiva, which compares the old type of design on the left-hand side with the new type of design. The old type of design is the old-fashioned idea of like Dieter Rams objects or cars by Pininfarina or, you know, form follows function, all those cliches that we used to think of for design. So if old design was problem solving, you know, another stereotype, the new design is problem finding. It's more important for designers to help politicians, policymakers, and citizens to understand what is worth working on than to just come up with, a solution. Problem solving is dead and is not something that helps us anymore. Or to give you another example, the old type of design thought about the futures, and instead the contemporary type of design thinks about parallel worlds. I'm sure that even here in Mexico you have fringe, you know, so the idea that you can have different ways to live a life and to bring society into the future, and you can think about it this way. But without going through all the different definitions, you will notice that if the old type of design was static and finished, the new type of design is dynamic, socially engaged, and open source and open mind. And I would like to show you also the fact that the new design is also old. You know, as usual, every time we want to really be positive and constructive towards the future, sometimes we need to look at the past. There's a lot of lessons to be learned. And for instance, critical design, which is so important today, used to exist already in the past. What is critical design? It's everything that I told you before. It's about problem finding. It's about trying to understand and formulate the issues that we will have to work on in the future. And what I'm showing to you here is the beautiful work of some Italian architects from the 1960s. They were called Superstudio. And they were part of a movement of architects all over Europe and all over the world, from Japan to the United States to Turkey, that were trying to think of a possible future relationship with the territory and with nature, which is so absolutely important for Tijuana, the relationship with the territory. So Superstudio, for instance, were thinking that in order to really live well with nature, the best thing to do was to build over nature these superstructures that were so different, so other than nature, that they would not interfere. It was this beautiful idea of also having, you see the slide on the bottom right, is this hippie idea of being in a commune and all happy together with children and wine. The most important thing for the future at that time was wine. Well, at that point, the architecture, the visionary architecture, was very politically charged and thinking about possible future, and so it is today. You see here the work of Tony Dunn and Fiona Raby. Tony and Fiona are two architects and designers that are based in London. Tony Dunn is also the director of the Design Interactions program at the Royal College of Art in London, which in my opinion is the most interesting school of design in the world. I'm just saying it here, and then also Eindhoven, but RCA definitely is. And in this case, Tony and Fiona are thinking also of the future, are also thinking of our relationship with nature, but they're being much more pragmatic. They're saying, in 30 years, we will have a problem of food scarcity in the world. It's already happening, but it will be even worse unless we do something about it. So they think of the possibility of having to outsource our gastrointestinal system. No sé cómo decir, hacerlo de nuevo afuera. So we might have to go back to digest, to eat and digest things that we haven't eaten in like centuries. You know, our appendix has shrunk because we don't need to eat roots anymore. Well, we might have to. So they build this equipment that is for eating roots, for eating algae, for eating leaves and pre-digesting them. And you see they made this beautiful video, and they also made models. So you see here the poor French students in the French countryside wearing these things and going around testing them. Can you see the slides well? Yeah, oh, I'm glad, you know, because they're quite beautiful. So you see there's less politics or less Marxism, if you wish, in the way critical design is today, but there's a lot of political act in how critical it is of the conditions of today. And you know, critical design is also the work, for instance, of Toro Lab. I decided not to put any more than one slide of their work because Raul and Ana are so shy and they don't want to appear too much. But I have known Toro Lab since 2003. And the security tree on the left-hand side is the first work that I featured in a MoMA exhibition, which was Safe, Design Takes on Risk. They have always done critical design. If you want to understand what I mean by critical design, think of their work. Their work is security tree. Their work is the whole visualization design for the transfronterizados that you might have seen before. And right now it's the Granja in Camino Verde. It's so important to see how this kind of critical design is about getting things in motion. It's about starting a new evolution. And the security tree was very important for New York to see what happens when you want to really think of critical design and art and you live in a frontier city. Another type of critical design that is much more benign and much more homey is the work on the right-hand side of Toby Wong. Toby Wong was a very interesting and mysterious designer. He died in very mysterious circumstances. He was sleepwalking, and, well, we don't want to go there, but he was always very weird. But you see there one of his works. It's a rose brooch that is made of bulletproof material. So you're supposed to put it in your heart, and if somebody tries to shoot you, the rose is going to stop the bullet. And if you really want to be safe even at night, that's a whole duvet made of bulletproof, so you can go to bed and nobody can shoot you. So it is about sometimes making people smile. It's about exaggerating the aspect that you want people to reflect on. And it's about really making people see that there are some issues to be dealt with. And design is also activist, contemporary design. Activist doesn't mean necessarily militant. It means just getting into action and really trying to move and to stimulate the public. Of course, it can be even more overtly activist. The work that you see here is by a South African designer and artist. His name is Ralph Borland, and it's called Suited for Subversion. It's a suit that you can wear when you go to a protest, to a demonstration, so it protects you from the batons of the police because it's padded. Also, it has a camera over your head, so you can record the whole action just in case the police said something and you want to accuse them. And the most beautiful feature is that it has a loudspeaker on your heart that amplifies your heartbeat. So it reminds the police that you're a human being. It's like the flower to the cannon. And also you can imagine if there's hundreds of people wearing these suits, all of a sudden you have this collective heartbeat that becomes almost threatening, you know, like, oh, here we come. So it's so beautiful. It's also this is in the collection of MoMA. You know, once again, beauty, elegance, humor, and real clarity. Homeless shelters are one of the typical exercises for so many architectural students, you know, because they are small architectures, they deal with an issue, an urban issue that can be tested on ground. So many students and architects do homeless shelters. But I like this solution by Cameron McNall because it goes beyond the normal homeless shelters. It's not only a shelter, it's also a way for people to see the problem. You know, one of the biggest problems with homelessness is that it becomes almost invisible. We learn to live with homeless people, and it's something that just crosses our mind without registering. But color can help. So these homeless shelters are not only functional, they're also very colorful. And it's going to be very evident that there are some problems there, some issues there. And interestingly, some architects have done something similar in this project. This is just a project for a barrio in Caracas. So it's about already barrios and favelas tend to use color very strongly, but in this case, it's really about, it's almost like a ribosome. I was looking before it, and Professor Zionat, so it's like a ribosome of issues over there. What I love very much is how design can really be in your face, like slap you in the face if you're a citizen or a politician. What you're looking at here is a visualization of data that comes from the government of the United States. So let me just sum it up for you. There are some blocks in cities in the United States where the government spends at least $1 million a year to keep some of the people of that block either in prison or in halfway houses, anywhere outside of society. So in a way, it's how much the government spends to make sure that some people are not complete citizens, right? It's a measure of entropy. And it's amazing to know that there are more than 350 of these blocks in Brooklyn alone. So if you read this in the newspaper in the morning, you can get really outraged for 20 minutes, and then you forget. But here come the designers from Columbia University. It's Laura Kurgan and a few at a lab that's there. And all of a sudden, they just printed red on black. And you have this vision in your mind of this problem that is never going to go away. So design sometimes is form, but that form is so much more than form. It's deep communication, it's politics, and it's activism. Communication is really what we're all about. You know, ever since the beginning of this century, truly, I communicate, therefore I am, is something that we can believe in. We are not able to live a life in a bubble. We are constantly in communication with others, and so is design. The power of contemporary design, especially the kind of design that relies on the web and that relies on visualization, is that of making communication even deeper. This website here is called BBC Dimensions because it was sponsored by the BBC, and it was designed by a group from London called Berg. What it does is it enables you to take big events that have happened somewhere else in the world, like the floods in Pakistan, or even not on the world, but the Apollo 11 moonwalk. And then you punch in your zip code. It works for the UK, works for the United States. I haven't tested it with Mexico, but you can try. And all of a sudden, you take that event and you superimpose it onto your home turf. So you can feel on your own guts, on your own stomach, how big the floods in Pakistan were and how small the Apollo 11 moonwalk was, just a walk around the block. So it's a different form of understanding of history, of the present, of the other countries. It's really important. Now, of course, there's much more poetic ways to communicate. I like how certain designers have found ways to communicate with the gods above. This, you know, it's very reminding of Mexican land art, you know, from the Mayan tradition, but it's a QR tag that is mown into a lawn in Germany. And if you scan it, it says, "Hello world," which is the way you start every new computer program. It's a way to test the program. And, you know, it appears on Google Earth, and basically it's to be read by the gods, you know, so, you know, you can scan it if you're a god with your cell phone. And I also like how certain designers really deal with how we communicate with God. This was the last exhibition that we did last year that was called Talk to Me. And in the exhibition, we had also devices for various religions to communicate with God. So here you see on the left-hand side is this little thing called Prayer Companion that is used by some cloistered nuns in northern England. And what it does, you know, I also like how the designers thought of the aesthetics of a convent, you know, so it's not like bright orange and translucent. No, it's like, it looks like an altarpiece. It's very, very discreet. And it's like a ticker tape, a ticker tape like the one you would have in Times Square. It's connected to the BBC, and then it's connected to a website that is called We Feel Fine, that looks at how people feel all over the world. So you have the BBC, the macro scale of news, and you have We Feel Fine, which is more intimate and micro. And the ticker tape gives the nuns pretexts, you know, ideas to pray about. Because, you know, they're cloistered, so they don't get the newspaper. They only get the Vatican newspaper, and we all know that's not really to be trusted. So they look, they keep that thing in the corridor, and they walk by, and they look at war in Afghanistan, and they pray. And the nuns say that it really keeps their prayers pertinent, which is very nice. On the right-hand side, instead, is a Muslim prayer mat, designed by a Turkish designer that has a compass in it, and it has a luminescent mat that it's drawn on. And when you orient the mat in the direction of Mecca, it lights up. Now, we all know where Mecca is. It's not necessary, but it's a symbolic gesture to bend and to really subserve technology to religion, which I find very poetic and very beautiful. And that's truly what we do a lot of times at MoMA. We look ways in which designers use advanced technology to respond to some of the oldest needs of human beings. One of the oldest problems with humans is the problem of menstruation. You know, it's one of the last barriers between sexes. It's a problem in religions. It's a taboo. It's a strong wall that separates us all. And I really love how this designer from London, Japanese designer from London and Tokyo, did this beautiful thing called a menstruation machine. This menstruation machine is like a chastity belt made of metal, and it's for men to experience having a period, like really complete. So there are some electrodes. It's really good. Thank you. There are some electrodes that go and give you cramps in the lower abdomen. Then there is a reservoir in the back, so you're supposed to draw your blood and put it there, and then a cannula delivers the blood between your legs. So you experience everything. And what is beautiful about this is that the designer, Sputniko, did the object, then she did this beautiful art piece, and then in Japan, she's a pop star. So she also did a really cute song with a video in which Takashi, that's the character, it's a man's name, but you know, in Japan, you never know if somebody is gay, wants to have an afternoon, wants to try to be a girl for the afternoon, or you know, you never know, so you can't make judgments. But Takashi, in the song and in the video that day, goes around Tokyo, dressed a little bit as a girl, wearing the menstruation machine, and he's going around with a friend of his who is a girl, and she sings, "It hurts, right? And it's gonna hurt even more." It's all like this. It's like this really strange, beautiful way to really communicate. And I always felt that it was one of my favorite pieces of design last year. It's really very powerful. Thinkering is one of the most interesting new and old ways for design today. Thinkering is a name that is a mixture of thinking and tinkering. I don't know if you know tinkering in Spanish, no sé cómo decir, pero es como manipular, hacer cosas con las manos, es como artesanado y experimentación. So tinkering is thinking with your hands, in a way. And it's a word that was created by John Seely Brown, who was the famed director of this research and development lab called Xerox PARC in Palo Alto, where they invented the graphic user interface. You know, they invented so many things that we use today. And tinkering is at the basis of today's maker culture. You know about open source, you know about maker culture, you know about all the attempts, software and hardware attempts to create tools that then can be improved collectively by harnessing community and collective thinking. So this is a beautiful example that I use every time I have to explain to, I don't know, say a MoMA trustee or somebody that is not necessarily used to this kind of idea of open source. Every time I have to explain it, I show this example, which is iWriter. iWriter is a beautiful project that was made by 5 or 6 programmers, artists, and engineers that have all studied at IBEAM, which is a kind of special institute for digital arts and technology in New York. They came together to help a graffiti artist from LA, Tempt. I don't know how many of you might be familiar with him. He was really big in the 80s. He was one of the major exponents of calligraphic graffiti. It was beautiful. So Tempt had become paralyzed because of Lou Gehrig disease. So he was in bed. He could only move his eyes and, basically only his eyes. And he had already given up on the idea of ever tagging a building again. But all of them came together and built this thing that is made with eyeglasses, a little computer camera, and then connected to a computer, a program, software, open source. So the camera reads the movement of Tempt's pupils. And with that, Tempt can draw on a screen a perfect tag. And when he's happy, he can just like punch, kind of click the screen right and send the tag to a computer, a laptop in downtown LA, which tags a building by using laser. So it's just amazing because it seems laborious and it seems remote and it seems really stretched, but instead our mind and our desire to do things is such that everything comes together, and Tempt said that he can really, really feel as if he were there tagging a building with his spray can, even though he's doing it with laser from his hospital bed. Now, of course, this is the extreme. Having done it for a graffiti artist, for tagging, is the extreme. In truth, this system can provide so many people with Lou Gehrig disease that cannot afford the kind of $10,000 or more equipment that you can buy to do the same thing. They can't afford it, but they can do it now with $50, because that's how much the eyeglasses and the camera cost. And of course, a computer, but the software is free. So this becomes something for everybody, becomes really a gift to the world. No copyright, no patent, just the generosity and the will to make things better for one and then for many. That's open source, and that's the beauty of it. Now, of course, open source then has some manifestations that are kind of cute. You see here the disassembled Think-O-Matic, which is a 3D printer by MakerBot. This is kind of the side of open source that I find not very interesting, but whatever it takes to get to a developed and mature culture is worth it. Now, of course, tinkering doesn't happen only in software and hardware and in physical computing. It also happens in our good old-fashioned chairs. And I really like this project by Martino Gamper. Martino Gamper is an Italian designer that lives in London. London is the center of it all, I'm sorry to say. It's really a good place. And Martino did this project that I find particularly interesting. It's 100 chairs in 100 days. So every day he would make a chair only with things he found in the street. And then he collected them all together, and they became like a catalog of tinkering in chairs, you know, for 3 months. Interestingly, they bring us back once again to the 1970s. And you see here, I feel that design today has a different kind of political charge. You know, design of the 1970s usually had a very strong Marxist vein to it. And in fact, this is the work of Enzo Mari. Enzo Mari is one of the deans of Italian design, one of the most complicated people to deal with, but a true genius, but oh mine. And it's kind of sweet because to this day, he still speaks in Marxist lingo and everything is still about class conflict. And sometimes I look at him and I'm like, oh mine, I cannot remember all this. It's from my childhood. But in the 1970s, he had done this beautiful project called Autoprogettazione. Open source. It was about giving the people, you know, he would say the masses, even though it's like, it looks like IKEA, but no, it was about the masses. It was about giving the masses the possibility and the instructions to make their own furniture before IKEA and before Thinkery and before anything else. So I always look back to the 70s. The 70s were similar to today, very difficult, complicated, rising violence of a different type, and so much creativity because we had to confront very serious issues. And there's a lot that goes back into it. The 70s were not one thing. They were not very ironic. And instead, the 80s kind of were, maybe in the wrong side, but irony is a weapon today, as it was at that time. I like to think back of the work of Tibor Kalman. Tibor Kalman was a really interesting art director, graphic designer, copywriter, tyrant, dictator. You know, like people working with him were like terrified and abused, but they have become the best graphic designers and art directors today. So I guess something was good about what he did. And he started Colors magazine. You know, it was sponsored by Benetton, but he started it in the 80s together with Oliviero Toscani. And I remember how shocked I was, like little Milanese girl, to see the first cover of Colors with this baby just out of the uterus. And he was like, oh my God, it was a really shocking image, as was Queen Elizabeth painted in black. You know, it was just amazing to see how the displacement, the shock of the bourgeoisie, you know, still worked then. Does it work today? It's a different bourgeoisie and it's a different shock. So you see here, again, the work of Tony and Fiona, Dan and Raby. They make fun of our fears, of our anguish with, you see on the two sides, these amazing furniture, hideaway furniture that is made with the same wood as your floor, so you can hide in it. And then in the middle, you have this huggable atomic mushroom. It's a cushion, it's plush, and you can embrace your fears. So it's a very different kind of irony, as is the kind of irony that sometimes is manifested by Dutch design or some type of British design. On the left-hand side, you see the Do-Hit chair that came out a few years ago. It's a chair that comes as a steel cube, and you have a hammer, and you have to like hammer the chair into shape. So, of course, it's participatory design, if you wish. But what I really like, I don't know how well you can see it, but at the bottom right is one of my favorite design objects that are like, what is that for? Let's call it experiential design. It's a device that enables you to be shocked by a lightning without dying. So you have just enough insulation and distance as not to die, but you get like, boom, the whole thing. Very, very important. So I guess, irony is important, and at the same time, it's very poetic. This is about going back. We've gone from analog to digital, and now let's bring it back. So it's a website on typography that is rendered in a book, but all the hyperlinks are made with red thread. So it's quite beautiful because you get to see the whole intricate physicality of a website, the spatiality of what's behind, the architecture of it, which is something that sometimes we forget, but that is so important. But the political issues of design still remain the ones that we should address the most. Here is the work of Josh Ahn, who in 2004, for the first time, scared the bejesus out of politicians and corporate board members in the United States, because it was the first time that one was able to take all the corporate boards of the US and all the government institutions and show the connections, show the possible conflicts of interest, show the possible collusions. It was really amazing. It was the first episode of the power of visualization design, the power of data harnessing and of data mining. So a very important website that was not repeated ever since. Other forms of visualizations, you see here the work of Diller, Scofidio, Renfro with several digital artists for an exhibition by Paul Virilio, the French thinker, in Paris. It was a beautiful show that was based on the idea that humanity today is defined by migrations. Big migrations due to genocide or to natural disasters, small daily migrations like the transfronterizados, all this movement of people and money and territory. And this visualization was very powerful, very big, and really gave an idea of how we move about the world, almost as if we were winds or as if we were water, and instead we're people. Of course, when it comes to real protest and real political unrest, we go back to the first part of the 20th century when it comes to a visual language that really talks about revolution. So it's funny how last year the Occupy Wall Street movement designed these posters that truly look like they come from the Bolshevik era. So it's funny, there's one language for political unrest to this day. What designers have that's very important today is vision. So being visionary is truly one of our responsibilities. And vision can be very local. That's what you have here in Tijuana right now, a vision for your city, a vision for your neighborhood. It doesn't matter, vision doesn't have to be huge or about the galaxy. It just has to be trying to envision and to spring into being a possible future that is better for us all. They used to do that also in the 70s and 60s. I always give you a little bit of chapter from the back. I really love this work by Hausrucker. Hausrucker were a group of Viennese architects that in 1968 decided that they wanted to create these helmets to expand your thought. So you can see that they are mind expansion helmets. But it doesn't matter how funny, or actually it does matter. I love how funny and performances-like they are. Their texts really indicated a way of thinking that was a precursor of the internet. So it's important to have a vision and articulate it and maybe show it with a funny, mind-expanding helmet. And with that, you kind of will it into action and you put a little brick in the wall that will then lead mankind to the future that we have today, whether it's good or bad. So it's really important to have vision. And today this vision is sometimes really far-fetched. I like how some designers are not afraid to have visions about the theory of the string theory, or they try to think of the parallel universes, so they don't stop in front of anything. This is the work of Anab Jain, a wonderful woman designer who lives in London also. She also went to the RCA, I'm sorry. And she designed this machine, which is a fictional machine, of course, to explain the existence of many parallel universes. Basically, you have a multidimensional camera with all these different bulbs that look like a bee's or a wasp's eye. And there are many videos that are mounted inside, and if you look at them, you see a slightly different story in each one of these eyes. So it's really like the movie Sliding Doors, it's like the TV series Fringe. Something happens in a parallel universe that has a slight variation and can signify many different things. And sometimes designers try to make us understand concepts that are really difficult. That's why the most recent collaboration between designers and scientists is so interesting. You know, there are designers that cooperate and collaborate with scientists to really drive through ideas that are otherwise impossible almost to comprehend because we're limited as human beings. But also, designers and scientists collaborate on projects that are visionary at a more local scale. So this is quite beautiful because it's the collaboration between two designers, James King and Daisy Ginsberg, with a group of synthetic biologists. Synthetic biology is a new branch of biology that posits that you can create new organisms by putting together little Lego blocks of DNA. So you just like compose a new organism into being. And it's, of course, it's very design-like. I mean, just the idea that you have these bricks, you know, it's kind of a natural combination of design and science. But every year, there's a big competition at MIT for students of synthetic biology, and they compete from all universities with the most interesting projects. And the UK, the University of Cambridge in the UK, won 2 years ago with the collaboration of these two designers because they worked on this new diagnostic system. They basically took E. coli, you know, the bacteria that we have in our gastrointestinal system all the time, and the students tweaked this bacteria so that they became E. chromi, as they called them, so that they reacted with different enzymes and changed color. And you drink a milkshake of E. chromi, and then the milkshake reacts with whatever you have in your gut, you know, different enzymes connected to different pathologies, whether you have a peptic ulcer or whether you have diverticulitis, you know, so they change color. So your output becomes the diagnostic tool. And it was quite beautiful because it was shown with all these different outputs in different colors with the legenda of the... It was quite beautiful. All this is real. It's not just science fiction. You can do it. I drank the milkshake. Nothing really happened. I'm not going to go into detail, but yeah, that's why I was fine. But I know that it's been tested, yes, and it's quite wonderful. Another example of a great collaboration between designers and scientists is the work of Revital Cohen. Revital works with many different scientists, but the collaboration I find most interesting is with these scientists that are usually neurologists that are working on the ghost limb syndrome. You probably know about the ghost limb syndrome. It's when an amputee loses a limb and keeps on feeling the limb, feeling the pain, feeling the discomfort, but she cannot itch it because it doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it's really very difficult, and usually it's cured with physical therapy so that it disappears. They use mirrors to convince you, to make you understand that you don't have that limb anymore. But there are very few neurologists, one is in Chicago, another one is Edinburgh, that think that if instead you harnessed the ghost limb syndrome, you might be able to regrow some terminus of nerves. And so you might be able to adhere a much better prosthesis in the future. So when you have these ideas and you can't really test them in reality, the collaboration with the designer as a scientist gives you more freedom. When you work with the designers, you cannot be subject to peer scrutiny, as in science. You can just test a few things that are not going to harm anybody. So Revital has, for instance, has found the help of a few amputees that she knows, and they're working on it, but in a very leisurely way. Still, it can help understand or at least test a few scenarios, which is what designers do best. Designers are great at building prototypes and at creating scenarios, and that's where they can offer a lot to other types of experts, whether they are non-experts like politicians, sorry, whether they're politicians or policymakers or scientists. It really works very well. And that leads me to talk about humanitarian design. Humanitarian design is a weird definition. I mean, all design should be humanitarian, just like all design should be social. But let's put it this way. Usually, it's considered to be the kind of design in kind of difficult situations in developing countries or after some kind of tragedy. I love this particular work, which we just acquired in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art. It's by a 28-year-old Afghani designer. His name is Masood Hassani. And he used to live in Afghanistan as a child in the north, in an area where there was war and there were a lot of minefield. And at some point in his life, when around age 16, his mother smuggled him out of the country, basically put him on a bus, and he ended up in the Netherlands and went to design school. So he was about to graduate, and he decided to do his thesis on something that was really part of his childhood. When he was a child, together with his brother and their friends, they would build these like little rolling things that were powered by the wind. There was so much wind, right? So they were toys, and they would just like play and race them and see which ones went faster with the wind. But sometimes some of these toys would get into the minefield, so they couldn't retrieve them anymore. So he thought of those toys and decided to do one of these toys that would also demine the fields. And this is where MgCrOl comes from. It's like this amazing dandelion that has a central core of injected plastic and then all these bamboo sticks that then have screwed up feet of plastic. And the whole thing is just light enough to be powered by the wind, so it rolls into the minefield, and heavy enough as to make the mines explode. And every time a mine explodes, it's not like the one that you see bottom right. There was an exaggerated mine. Usually mines explode enough to make you lose your limbs. They don't blow everything up. So that dandelion can explode at least 10 mines before it's completely destroyed. And then you can just replace it because you can find bamboo everywhere. Now this is the most gorgeous kind of design, and it's very local. A form of humanitarian design that instead was more complicated was the famous hippo roller, which became the flag of humanitarian design. It was this water container that was invented by two engineers in South Africa in the 1970s to enable women and children that sometimes in African villages spend most of their day transporting water from the stream up to the village, to enable them to bring more water. And this hippo roller became the catalyst for so much good and bad in design, because some designers, especially a group of really, really young and idealistic designers from the US called Project H, decided that they could do better. And they tried to redesign the hippo roller so that it could use less plastics, it could be packaged better. I mean, all these good intentions that completely crashed against the reality of a different distribution, communication, corruption, whatever you want to call it, cultural system in Africa, which is not all negative. It's in some cases much positive. It's just different. So humanitarian design doesn't really work unless you are there. And if you're not from there, at least you have to be there with the people that belong there. And it has to fairly always be local to succeed. That's why the wonderful people from Project H decided to learn from their mistake and move to North Carolina in a very rural and backwards area, and for a year stayed there and convinced the kids there to learn how to build, how to design, until at the end of the year they built a new farmer's market stand and a new chicken coop. And these beautiful items gave so much pride and so much sense of possibility to the community there that the year after they went on with new farm market stands. So hey, if you're a designer and you're really interested in doing good, up and move where you're needed, or look at your backyard. And it's a beautiful way to really think about the sense of responsibility that is so important for designers today. Responsibility is also about helping people be responsible. Sometimes we would like, as citizens, to do more about certain issues, but we don't really have the knowledge or the tools. For instance, carbon footprint or water footprint, we never know what's behind anything, these shoes or the floor here. We don't know what the footprint is. Could we have made better choices? Could we have influenced the architects to choose another floor? We don't know. I like how some designers are starting to think, of course there are very big barriers in legislation and in corporate regulation, but these designers are starting very locally. There was this restaurant in Beijing last year for Beijing Design Week, where all the menu had the water footprint for every single dish. Now you might tell me, gosh, when I eat, I don't want to be reminded of how guilty I should be. But you know what? It's not about feeling guilty. It's about getting used to knowing what some rice is, so it becomes part of your lingo. Pretty much like now we've become recyclers and we can't even think not to recycle aluminum. It should be the same with other institutions. Responsibility sometimes is about looking at your own tradition. And I really love the work of these two Italian designers. One is from Sardinia, where I was born, and the other is from Sicily. So they're two island kids. They're kids because they are in their late 20s. They're called Forma Fantasma. And they do beautiful work, including recuperating organic resins from the turn of the 18th or the 19th and 20th century. There's a foundation in Sicily that studies all these different resins that are made with honeybees wax and straw, that resins that you can cook in your kitchen and that can make vessels. You can make actually vessels that contain liquids. So I like how they're recuperating all that and creating beautiful objects that can give us a sense of how we could think about our tradition. And sensitivity is really also what matters. Sensitivity sometimes is about kind of a technical sensitivity. The top left, you see the work of Revital, which I really like. Again, she was the woman working with scientists. But that's a program to scratch your computer and make it bleed if it keeps on crashing. When your computer gets on your nerves, now you can harm it. And I also really like the green bullets, top right. They are very environmentally conscious bullet because there's no lead, so they will not harm the environment, even though they'll kill you. And also, at the bottom, you see this self-guided bullet. There's no way to escape. So there's this idea of sensitivity that is very technical, and then instead there's an idea of sensitivity that is about humanity, which is the one that I'm most interested in. This is probably one of the most beautiful exhibitions I've ever been to. It was an exhibition about death. It was all the students of the Eindhoven Academy of Art and Design working on death, just making objects that were about helping people die, helping people deal with death, helping people mourn. Very sensitive and very beautiful, as is the work of another Dutch designer, Brigitte Koremans. In the Netherlands, when you have a spontaneous abortion before the 24th week, your fetus is not considered a being. So you don't get a funeral, but sometimes the parents want to mourn, so they want to have their own ritual. So Brigitte designed these coffins for stillborn babies, and they go in size from 24th week to before, and they are about filling the gaps. Sometimes our laws don't really give us everything that we need as human beings, and designers take notice and they try to fill those gaps of humanity. And the sensibility that goes with design is also quite important. Sensible means also economical. You know, when people say economy, they always think of economics, but in truth, economy is to make the best out of what you have. And there are countries in the world that are not the United States, that are not the European countries, that are not the so-called first world, which I always think is such a weird way to define, but they are the other countries that can teach us best how to really make the maximum effort, the maximum result with the minimum effort. And this is Guatemala. It's called Maya Pedal. It's a company that does all sorts of equipment using parts of bicycles, recycled parts of bicycle. You can have a dishwasher, you can have a generator. Everything is about reusing. This is nothing for you to see, just like it's very similar to the way I grew up in Italy. As we say in Italy, we don't throw up and we don't throw away any part of the cow. We eat everything. And that's what I think the first world has to learn. And the first world can also learn a lot from working with the third world or the developing world to, for instance, work on the Chula. Philips Design worked on this new type of stove that deals with the issue that so many women around the world get really poisoned every year because they cook with stoves and no exhaust. And so they worked with a local company in India, and they came up with a solution that truly advanced the whole situation. While instead, at the bottom right, you see the one laptop per child. I don't know if somebody was here 2 days ago where there was a presentation by one of the people that are running the foundation right now. The one laptop per child is a great project and a great vision that had to resize itself because of several hurdles that it encountered that had to do with the globalization rather than the localization of economy. So it's interesting how a lot of design has to be pragmatic in dealing with the different solutions in different parts of the world. This is a very good friend. His name is Ezri Tarazi, and he is in Israel, where designers tend to be either really pragmatic, like they design irrigation systems and weapons, or they are completely lyrical. So they design, you know, like something to serenade the moon. I don't know. There's no in-between, usually. And instead, Esri was able to touch this chord of in-betweenness when he was commissioned by the government and the army of Israel to design gas masks for little children, for newborn babies, toddlers, and kids. And I don't know if you can see it well, but he was so thoughtful. You know, when a baby, the most important thing for a baby is to be hugged. So the gas mask goes all the way, is compressed here so that the baby can be hugged. And instead for a kid, it's important to be able to play and move around and drink a soda. So you see the one for the kid with the soda, instead it leaves the neck open, it closes here, it's fixed here, and it has a straw, a part for a straw. So it's about being really sensitive. If one has to be able to wear a gas mask for a whole day, as gas masks are labeled in Israel, then it should be able, this gas mask, to accommodate one's needs and one's habits, which is quite beautiful. And you know, that's also the accommodating the needs and the possibilities of people is also what brings me to talk to you about Elemental. I don't know if you know Elemental, the architecture company in Chile. Usually architects are so self-centered and megalomaniac. They would never, ever not finish a building, not make it into their own monument. And instead, Elemental, very beautifully, prepares this kind of blank canvas of a building for people to expand upon. The social economic system is such in Chile that the government gives a once-in-a-lifetime subsidy to families to buy their own home. It's a very small subsidy for a very basic home price, but it's enough to have 2 stories and to have the possibility of really having a community, of growing with a lodge, another story, maybe a balcony, and a cul-de-sac. So it's the beginning of a new community, and that's what Elemental does. And basically, it does seeds. It designs seeds for new communities. So if we go back to this idea of contemporary design that is projected towards the future, after this series of examples, you probably have a better sense of what I mean. You have a better sense of what you already have in Tijuana, because differently from many other places, and Mexico in general, this kind of design has already taken really root here. And it always was political, it always was sensitive, it always was pragmatic and visionary, and even more so today. And we need to get there, we need to get moving in that direction. And if we need to burn a few more chairs in order to get there, well, so be it. Thank you very much. I don't know anymore how I'm doing with time.
We're out of time.
We're out of time, so
But
thank
we
you.
still have time for Mr. Jose Galicot to give you a little token of appreciation.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Paola, muchas gracias
Muchísimas gracias
por
a
estar aquí.
ustedes.
Padrísima tu plática.
Gracias.
Y yo nada más quiero invitar a Paola que nos permita, sin presión, no porque haya cientos de gentes aquí, que nos permita llevarle al MoMA una demostración, una expresión de Tijuana, de artistas de Tijuana, en base a lo que tú nos presentaste hoy. Que nosotros la presentemos y que nada más nos des chance de presentarla en el MoMA. ¿Cómo ves?
Ya está presentada, el trabajo de Toro la ves ya todo el tiempo.
Sí, pero uno que salga de Tijuana Innovadora con los temas, ¿cómo ves?
Hacemos, tenemos que criticarlo y ver.
Sí, sí.
Tienes que hacer lo mejor posible, toda su dedicación, toda su pasión, todas sus promesas, y
Y
vamos
lo
a ver.
ves,
Y vamos a
conste,
ver, claro.
conste, ¿eh?
Gracias.
Esta es una bella ragazza
Gracias.
italiana. ¿Sabe? Qué graciosa, ¿no? Qué simpática, qué inteligente, qué manera de explicar cosas con gracia, con gusto. El MoMA de Nueva York es el museo, probablemente el museo más importante del mundo de arte moderno. Ella es la curadora en persona, vino porque es amiga de diseñadores
Raúl
de
y Ana.
Tijuana, de Raúl y de Ana. Tenemos en Tijuana diseñadores de carácter mundial que ya han exhibido cosas y que ella los presentó ahí, que aparte están haciendo un trabajo formidable en Camino Verde. Raúl Cárdenas y todo el grupo de Toro Lab son un orgullo para Tijuana, y la verdad, Raúl exhibe de sus obras, no sé si anda por aquí, es muy tímido.
Está acá, ¿dónde estás?
Mándenmelo. Raúl, ¿dónde está? Raúl exhibe sus obras por todo el mundo. Me estoy tomando este tiempo con mucho gusto porque solo falta...
Está bello.
Y en esta única ocasión yo no le voy a dar el premio a esta muchacha tan guapa, se lo voy a dar a él para que se la dé a ella.
Gracias. A ti. Muchísimas gracias. ¿Ah, sí?
Raúl. Esta parte a mí me divierte. Digo, la verdad es lo más divertido de todo lo que yo hago, aparte de escuchar todas las conferencias. Qué barbaridad, híjole, qué manera de presentar las cosas, de decirlas y hacerlas. Y Raúl tiene en toda Europa, presenta obras, o sea, no tiene idea el talento que tenemos aquí, y la verdad el orgullo que me da ser su amigo y quererlo como lo quiero. Amigos, denme su mano, mire qué tal, ¿eh? Nada más. Paola Antonelli, en persona, en Tijuana. Gracias.
Gracias a usted.
Gracias, Paola. Última conferencia. Última. ¿Qué tal, eh? Una jornada larguísima, pero interesante. Todos aquellos que hemos participado hemos aprendido.